forward today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
You're listening to Arkansas Preps Weekly on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
Here we go.
What is up, everybody? Thanks for joining us on episode 52 of Arkansas Preps Weekly here on the Natural State Sports Network. I'm Kyle Sutherland as we get back in to our hardwood edition, talking with some basketball coaches. This week it's going to be all 4A as we talk with Pulaski Academy girls coach and legend Becky Yarbrough. And then we got another legend in Coach Raymond Cooper, who is the head coach of the Mills boys, of course. Both of those teams ranked number one in their respective class 4A. Their respective class. But really excited to pick their brains. A lot of combined knowledge through the years when you think about where they have been, how long they have coached. So going to talk with them about that. And of course, get into all the success that they have had this season as we get close to wrapping up the regular season here and getting in to the playoffs. Before we get started with that, I want to remind everybody, if you have not, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and also hit that notification bell so you are notified every time we release an episode. Also, Apple, iHeartRadio, Spotify, any of the audio platforms, if you prefer those, we are there as well. So we will get right into it, starting with Coach Becky Yarbrough of the Pulaski Academy Lady Bruins basketball team. We are now happy to be joined by a very familiar name, not only in Arkansas prep high school or prep hoops, but Arkansas hoops in general. Coach Becky Yarbrough, and it still feels very, very weird to say head coach of the Pulaski Academy girls after 33 years at Star City, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well. But, Coach, you've got a 24-0 team heading into this week. I know there's still a lot left for you guys to accomplish, but I know you knew when you took this job you were going to have a really good team returning, but just kind of talk about what that's been like thus far as we're in the final stretch of the season.
It's been really good. It's been really fun. These kids have been great and a joy to coach. Had a lot of experience coming back, and I think they've just worked really hard and, set their goals, and it's been really great coaching them.
And I was mentioning that I was going to mention at the opening there that you're actually the second coach that we've had in a row, the girls coach that is undefeated. Of course, we had Dover's Kristen Williams on last week. And, with each win, of course, you come in to the conference play undefeated. You're currently leading the 4A5 North race. And anytime that you continuously win games and you're ranked high and all those different things, you're going to have that target on your back. But with the way that this team in particular, the way that they grew last year, do you think maybe that back half of the season, when I know you weren't there, so you can't really speak on it, but just with the way that they turned things around, particularly in the second half, do you think that really got brought into this year with the senior leadership that you have, as well as the couple of really talented underclassmen?
Sure it did. It carried over, just that postseason experience. And, they brought back that leadership this year. And I think it's really helped us.
And I know when you took over, I'd read something, I can't remember what the article was, but you had talked about, or maybe it was at Media Days that you discussed it, but a renewed energy. And, obviously you had an incredible run, 33 years, as I mentioned there at Star City. And I know that you loved it down there in South. Of course, you're from South Arkansas, but just needed something different. And you come to Pulaski Academy. And, you still, again, have a really young group for the most part, but just kind of talk about that renewed energy. I know that you looked very excited to be there when we did see you in October at Media Days, and that was kind of the beginning of the season. But, maybe that has a little bit different meaning now that you've coached for a few months with this team. So go into a little bit more detail about that, what you meant exactly by the renewed energy.
Well, I had a great run at Star City, really enjoyed it. Great memories, great relationships there. So, of course, coming to somewhere new was, it was exciting for something different, I think. Meeting new people, working with kids, new kids. But it's been great. These kids, they're excited. They're excited about the things that we're doing here at PA. They, like I said before, they've just been a joy to coach. They work hard. They bring it. They're locked in every single day. They work on their own a lot. So it's been a lot of fun since I've gotten here. The people here have been very supportive. Everyone supports everybody here, so it's been great.
I think I actually asked you at media days. Of course, you hadn't started the season yet, but you definitely have been known to get media coverage. You've had some very successful teams, won over 900 games in your career, so you're certainly not immune to media coverage. But now that you're in Little Rock, you're in the heart of the state, and now you've got these videos, which I have thoroughly enjoyed. Those video clips of practice. There's a lot of fun to watch. Of course, you'll see the news stations coming in and all that comes with that. Has that been a little bit of an adjustment just because, I know you're a South Arkansas girl, kind of used to being tucked away to that part of the state. Has that been a little bit of an adjustment for you with just all the media coverage that y'all have been consistently getting?
Yes, it has. No doubt. Being in Southeast Arkansas, you obviously don't get this much media coverage. It doesn't matter how much success you have. You do get a little, but not this much. So it has been different in that fact that, you have a lot more media coverage. The Coach Barnhill, our media guy here at PA, just does an outstanding job of promoting our players, our programs here at PA. So I'm very excited about working with him and what he's done for our program here.
Speaking of the way, and Pulaski Academy does a phenomenal job in all sports, and we in the media thank them for that, for getting stats out there, for getting things that we need to know out, because we don't have that everywhere. But I wanted to ask you too, because you played at UAM, I believe you're a 2011 inductee of the Hall of Fame there, if I'm not mistaken. Compared to when you played or even when you started coaching, I know that sometimes, especially when it gets into rankings and things like that, it can be a polarizing topic, but just the coverage overall and the way that these kids are seen now, social media definitely has its negatives, but the way that it has just continued to grow throughout the years as far as coverage for both male and female athletes, talk about what that's been like for you to watch unfold.
Well, it's definitely changed over the years and throughout the years. And I think, it's helped the kids, get their names out there, the media with their games, even just with huddle. Me and the coach were talking about the other day, Coach Dallimore, my assistant, we were talking about, years ago, we would have to drive across the state just to exchange a film. And now you just get on huddle and switch films. And so it's definitely been a good change. It's made it a lot easier. It's made it good for the kids, promoting the kids and their talents as far as college goes. So it's definitely been a positive change too.
So in the all the games that you coached there and in the over 3 decades at Star City, you made a state championship. We'll talk about the 2 runner-ups first, because you made it in 1993 and then again in 2010. Now, early on in your career, you made that 1993 state championship game. What did you learn that you took from that, coming up short in the final, and then it took a little bit, I guess 17 years before you got back again. What was really some of the main lessons that you learned from getting all the way there that you ended up taking into the rest of your years until y'all got there again in 2010?
Oh yeah, it's kind of difficult there for a while. We got so close. We lost to Bologna in '93 by 1, and then we lost to Prairie Grove by 3 points. So we came up short by 4 points. I think just keeping things in perspective, and as the year goes, I think the biggest thing I've learned is how your team peaks throughout the year. You don't want to peak too early. Obviously, you want to toughen up your schedule. And, I think throughout the years, I've tried to do that with our schedule. And I think that's benefited our teams the most is playing the toughest teams you can find to get you ready for postseason play, because you find out your weaknesses, and obviously your kids learn to handle more adversity throughout the season that way. So I would say the schedule, probably taught me the most about preparing your kids for down the road in postseason play.
And you guys won it in 2012, won a state championship then. And then in 2020, I was talking with England's boys coach Trent Morgan last week, and he was one of the 4 state championship games that were actually able to be played before the COVID shutdown. Before I get your take on that, because I like to get different perspectives of what that was like for different coaches and players of going through. I mean, I don't know if tragic is necessary. Well, you can. It was just a really tough situation. What you had to endure, what everybody had to endure during COVID, and there were some tragedies in there. But talk about first 2012 when you got over the hump, won the state championship game after coming up short twice. Of course, the most recent 2 years prior to that. What would you say that feeling was like? You know, being able, you got there for the third time, and then you were able to hoist the gold trophy as opposed to the silver one that time.
You're talking about in 2020?
In 2012. 2012 when you won the first one. Yes, ma'am.
It was a relief for me, because we'd been there and we came up short. But, we played Farmington, started out well in that game. And, it was just such a relief. And it was really good. It was just an amazing experience to know we finally accomplished it and didn't leave there losing on the losing end, because that's hard. That's hard on those kids to work that hard and get to that point and then have to leave shorthanded. So I was happy for the kids and happy for Star City that we accomplished that for the community, the school, everybody.
Then in 2020, as I mentioned, the 1A and 2A games, those got to be played. We kind of knew leading up to it that something could happen. We knew that COVID was starting to really kind of make its way over to America, and it was spreading so rapidly. What was that like for Becky Yarbrough and the Star City Lady Bulldogs? I've heard all kinds of accounts, but what was it like for you? You were actually scheduled to play Farmington in that game as well, and it didn't get to happen. 3A through 6A all had to split. So what was that like for you and your team just enduring all that?
It was crazy. We had actually got there and watched one game that day, and then we had went to check in the hotel. And when we got there, I remember the coaches that were already there ahead of us turned around and said, "You're going to have to get back on the bus and go home." And I said, "What?" And they said, "Yeah, they're sending us all home." I said, and we were kind of, as we were traveling back home on the bus, the kids were quiet, and it was just kind of like we were all in shock that, because we had built up so much excitement to be there, and we'd had a great week of practice, and we were just ready to get that game going, and then we had to go back home, and it was just a shock, a feeling of shock. We just really couldn't believe it. And even after we got back home, there was days afterwards that we kept thinking, we're going to play, we're going to get to play this. We don't know when, but we're going to get to play. And, kids were going, parents were taking them to churches to practice, trying to keep them in shape and ready to go. And, it just never happened.
And talking about this year's team, as I mentioned at the top, for those that haven't seen, currently 24-0, leading the 4A5 North race. And, I know you got some senior leaders in Madison Sanders, Sophia Boyd, that have played a lot of minutes for the Lady Bruins. You've also got the sensational sophomore duo of Randy Stewart and Greenlee Elmore. I know junior Lindsey Johnston is a name that I've seen quite a few times this year. So talk a little bit about how each one of those girls, maybe your starting five, plays their roles, and also maybe a name or two in there that I didn't mention.
Well, those five girls are amazing. They really get after it. They complement each other really well on the floor. They each bring their own role, I guess you could say, their own strengths to the game. But the thing that I admire the most about those five kids is they play so hard, and they play so, they're intense. And that's what I like, is intensity. And obviously they bring that. They bring it to practice. They bring it to the game. If we can keep them healthy and on the floor together, we're really good, can be. Our bench is getting better. I'm excited to say, we have sophomore Ellie Robkin and junior Maddie Carter. And we also, we've got some more sophomores and juniors that are starting to come back and come around right now. So I'm hoping by state tournament time, they will be ready to go with more experience and can help us out coming off the bench.
During your time in Star City, I imagine you coached siblings, of course, but probably children of parents that you had previously coached before. So I say that to say that your standard of your culture and all that was already set at Star City. You come in this year, and again, you knew you had a talented team that was coached by another phenomenal coach in Rick Treadway. But were you maybe a little, again, you talked about intensity, and that's one thing you are known for is your intense style of play. Did it maybe surprise you a little bit with how well they bought in, or was that kind of just something that you expected? Again, because, it's a totally different world than it may have been 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yes. They, when I got here, Rick Treadway, great friend of mine, a lot of respect. He did a wonderful job here. And I was very fortunate to come in behind somebody that good. And these kids, the work ethic. Their work ethic is just great. They really bought in to our what we wanted to get accomplished. And I came in last March, and they were ready to work and go to work right then. And it did surprise me how well it was a good fit early, and it just started off really well and took off quickly. And the kids, I think, with their attitudes and their work ethic and my intensity, it all went. It was a good fit for both of us.
You mentioned a second ago about beefing up your schedule, particularly in the non-conference when you have more control over the games that you play. And I think that was probably the most, when we had media days back in October, I think that's the most common thing. And you hear this from coaches in any sport a lot, especially when it comes to non-conference play. We're not necessarily trying to, or I guess you are trying to win games, but it's not necessarily the end goal is to come out of conference play undefeated. Now your team did that. I guess a tough slate. I mean, you played a Nettleton team that is, in my opinion, much better than their record. Lake Hamilton's good. Valonia is certainly a top 10, top 15 team right now. Westside Greers Ferry, a very, very, hands down the best 1A team that we've seen right now. But one thing that really caught my eye is y'all have a game this Friday, actually, a non-conference game against Earl in Class 2A. Now, if people are not familiar with Jada Maples and Journey Jefferson, that backcourt, you're just as well as I do. Obviously, you're going to get a great look from them. I want to know, how did that game getting scheduled go about with Coach Steve Jefferson there, especially at this point in time in the year? Obviously you're trying to get another really good look before you get into postseason play, but what went into scheduling that game here in February?
Well, we only have 5 teams in our conference, which makes it very difficult. Got a lot of spaces to fill in January and February. Coach Treadway had already scheduled Earl before I got here, which I was very happy to fill that spot, especially with a good team, because those 2 guards can really go. I'm excited about Friday night. That's going to give us a good test. So I'm really looking forward to that competition. I think it's going to be a great game.
As we wrap up here, I want to talk a little bit about your time. So you were born and raised in Woodlawn, and you had a great career at Arkansas Monticello. And I want to ask you a little bit too. I asked you earlier about how just the coverage has changed, not just from you going from South Arkansas to Little Rock, but just in general of from your playing days to the way it is now. Talk a little bit about your recruiting process. Obviously you stayed close to home, but even when I was in high school, just 15, 16, 17 years ago, that was kind of when social media was getting really big. So we would just get letters, and I wasn't highly recruited by any means, but you would just basically get letters in the mail. Did you have many coaches coming to your games, or was it just more so you kind of got stuff in the mail and that's how they got in touch with you?
Had a few coaches come to the games, but I'm like you, a lot of letters in the mail. You'd run to the mailbox, get your letters, and see who it was from. But that's changed quite a bit. But the letters were exciting to get. But very seldom did you have coaches come to your games. But I did stay close to home because of family and friends. So, and I really respected Coach Albie early. He's been a great influence in my life and my coaching. Played for him for 4 years at UAM, and just a great coach and a wonderful person. So I really liked him, and that was a big reason to go into UAM also.
Let's talk about Albie early. I was actually just texting Kent earlier to get for some stuff for softball.
Oh, yeah.
Speak of the devil, but Albie early is if there's any coach that doesn't get, and I'm not saying he doesn't get credit, but probably not the amount that he deserves. Is considering that in all collegiate sports, the last time I checked, at least all Arkansas collegiate sports, regardless of what you're looking at. He coached obviously softball and women's basketball, but he is the winningest coach, I believe, right ahead of Norm DeBryan, Arkansas's former baseball coach. He had particularly in women's sports. Talk about just what he did. You obviously know it from a personal standpoint from basketball, but also what he did for softball, but just women's sports and sports in general in the state of Arkansas.
I think Coach Early could win at whatever he coached just because he was his personality. He just connected with the players, but yet you knew when you started practicing, he was all business and ready to go and get prepared for games. And he did that with us. He prepared us for the games, but he also prepared us for life. He really cared for his players. We knew that he cared for us and wanted the best for us, not just our time at UAM, but after that. So he was a great role model. He did a wonderful job with his teams, and I have a lot of respect for his family.
As we wrap up here, I try to always ask, whether it's players or coaches that I have, just some advice that they maybe have for some of the next generation or coaches that are new into the profession or really ones that maybe aspire to be. So I'll ask you from a standpoint of really just some advice that you would give a coach, because it's a totally different world, especially with social media and everything. I mentioned a second ago, it's a double-edged sword, but a lot of times, especially if things aren't going well, coaches are going to see some opinions about them, maybe even from some people that they know. So maybe one that's going through a rough patch, whatever the story may be, or someone that's aspiring to get into this career. What would you, someone that's won almost 1,000 games in their career, what advice would you give to them, to someone who may need it?
Outwork your opponent. I think nothing surpasses hard work. Lots of time in the gym, lots of time on film work. Keep learning. I don't think, this is my 37th year, but I'm always learning still. So I'm still reaching out to my friends for advice. I think you can never stop learning, and I think you can always try to outwork people.
We've been talking with Pulaski Academy girls coach Becky Yarbrough. Coach, it was an honor to have you on. Best of luck to the rest of the way as we get down to the meat and potatoes of the season. And again, pleasure talking with you. Appreciate all that you've done for the game, and it's certainly been fun to watch you with the Lady Bruins this year.
Thank you so much, Kyle.
All right, up next, we've got Mills boys coach Raymond Cooper. Stay with us. All right, we're back now and joined by Mills boys coach Raymond Cooper. Coach, great to have you. We've had a lot of conversations through text, a few on the phone here. I've wanted to get you on the pod for a while now, and what better time? You guys, you continue to roll through number one in Class 4A, pretty much have been throughout the entire course of the season, but I know you got a lot left. And this is right around the time, if you look especially through the last 2 or 3 years, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second, but your teams throughout the past 2 or 3 seasons, they would kind of start off a little slow for whatever reason, and then really pick up at the end. But this year, it's really, for the most part, in the big picture, especially in the wins and losses and just being the wins for the most part right now, it's really come together really from the jump. And so just kind of talk about the run that they have currently been on.
Yeah, we've had a habit of typically starting slow. And that's due to a lot of things that we require for them to learn offensively and defensively. So sometimes it takes a little while to get used to that. But this is a senior group. I've got 6 seniors, so they've been through that. So I think that attributed to the good start, and they've been able to pretty much maintain it throughout the year. So I just try to keep the head level and just keep our heads down and just keep grinding it out to the last day.
I think it was before maybe the 22-23 season, you and I were, and Eric Taylor and I were talking about this about 3 weeks ago. It was before that season, about a little over 2 years ago. You had a feeling this 25 class, once those guys were seniors and once they got a little bit more experience and older, you knew that it was going to possibly be something special. And you talked about the senior class. You only graduated one, if I remember, from last year. So you basically brought everybody back. And talking about not just what you demand as your standard, but just the X's and O's part of it. Talk about how that experience really has translated into this year.
It's our offense and defense is a lot of reads. So it kind of takes a while to get on the same page, because it's not like it's structured, but if this happens, then you do this. And so it takes a little while for them to get used to playing that way. And then we like to play fast, offensively and defense. So they got to learn to play fast and think all at the same time and communicate. And it just takes a little while to get in the groove of doing that a lot. But this senior class was one that has embraced the process. And I said, okay, we're going to go ahead and play them young and just live with it. And we knew there were going to be some bumps in the road, and hopefully it will pay off a little later down the road. And it's starting to pay off now because these guys are really they're really clicking, and they spend a lot of time. And this is a group that dedicates itself off the court too, because we have player development and they have bought into it, and it's not mandatory. So to get guys to do that little extra, that's when you find your really good teams.
And I know that as long as you've done this, you've always loved to schedule tough non-conferences. I mean, that's what the best teams do. They put their teams up against a gauntlet, so that way they're going to get prepared, not just for the conference season, but eventually that will also help their heads get right for when postseason play comes around. Your guys' only loss. You come into this week 22-1, and again, I said number 1 in 4A. The only loss that you have is to a 5A Benton team that many consider the favorite right now. Really just tough non-conference schedule that saw wins over Bryant. I think you beat Central twice, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe what was the difference? I know when you were going through those tough non-conference schedules we talked about the past few years, wasn't so great, just not because you weren't necessarily talented or anything. You were just maybe waiting on some football guys, or you were trying to get some of the young guys acclimated. So now that you did have, and I know you've kind of answered as far as like the way that this team has developed, but I guess really my question is, how much more fun was it to watch this team throughout the first half of the season, maybe more so than the last few years?
Well, it's no fun losing. That don't matter who you lose to, but how do you know where you are if you don't test yourself?
Right.
And, beating teams that, a lot of teams that you probably figure that you're going to beat, it doesn't really push you, and it covers up and it covers up a lot of weaknesses that you may have if you playing teams that are a little bit, that are not as strong as some of the other teams. When you play, that's why I want to play as tough a schedule early, so we find out who we are. And then we know what we got to work on and what we have to improve on. And, in our teams, normally we for whatever reason, we start off bad, but it also makes them focus and lock in. And it's easy to coach a team that's lost a few games than a team that's won a whole bunch of them. Yeah. So I love that model, and it's one I've always used, and I'll continue to use it, because I think that's the best way to get ready for postseason, is play as tough a schedule as you can.
We've talked about the success this year and gone into a little details about that. Let's talk about some of the top players. You look at, I'm going to name some just off the top of my head: Zaylen Rowland, Anthony Hester. I know Vance Cunningham, Marshall Walls are two names I've seen a lot this year. Jody Bell, another senior. So talk about some of those guys that I just mentioned and really what they mean to this team, maybe some of their individual roles. And if I missed any, definitely touch on those as well.
Okay. Our senior class has really done a great job with leadership, especially Zaylen Rowland. He's a guy that's played for us since the 9th grade. He made a mistake in practice the other day, and I got on him. I said, "You played 150 games for us. I mean, why can't you remember that?" And I've been tough on him, but he's a great leader. He's He's a hard worker. He's a great student. And one thing I love about this group, this is a good group that's good on and off the court. We've had the highest GPA that I've ever had as a coach last semester. We had a team GPA of 3.4. And that's just work ethic, guys. And if you work hard in the classroom, it correlates on the court because you have the same habits. And these guys have got really good habits, and it's led by him. Jody Bell is another one who's really stepped it up later. He's made a big jump from last year. So we're looking to see, those guys do well here and at the next level, whatever level that may be. Vance has really come on after football. He took him a while to kind of knock we hadn't been this deep in the football in the playoffs before too. So, that's something that I've had to adjust to since Coach Lee has been here because, we're in the playoffs every year. And it's a great thing for the school. And it helps with the football players too, because they come back a little bit stronger and a little meaner. So we're glad to see Vance is playing well. Anthony Hester's he's just turned himself into an elite basketball player. He spends as much time as anybody in the gym. He's grown he's a 43% three-point shooter this year. And that's just amount of time. He's always could rebound, play defense, and attack the basket. But now he's grown in shooting, so it really makes him tough to guard. Marshall is a guy that lacked confidence, and he's just stepped it up just really, really big lately. And his biggest thing, and I just telling him all the time, you just don't know how good you are. And I think he's finally realized that and coming to his home. So just those guys. Don't let me forget. We call him MC Messiah Curry.
Yeah.
He's leads us on defense, and he's going to be one of our next point guard coming up. So he's got to embrace his role, and he's doing a good job this year. And Zay is doing a good job helping him, get prepared. So, so just looking forward to finishing this season with these guys, and hope we finish strong.
And talking about the new conference, we talked about some players there, and it was the 4A8 that you were in previously, now in the 4A5 South. Is that right? I'm doing this off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm going to take your word for it on that.
I think that is right, yeah.
We move around so much, it's hard for me to keep up.
Well, I will say, though, this has got to be – I know you got Magnolia in the conference as well, but this got to be a little bit easy. Not easy is not a word I like to use in sports, but as far as the travel goes, maybe a little bit easier in that regard when you're playing the Fountain Lakes, the East M's, Bauxites. Team's a little bit closer in terms of that.
Oh, absolutely. It helps in a lot of ways. The travel late in the season, it's a grind. When we're having to travel 2 hours and, twice a week sometimes, and it's a grind. But being closer and being able to play in a little shorter distances, it really helps out, with fatigue. It helps out with the legs. It helps out with just mentality, just not having to ride that old yellow bus all over the place.
Yeah, no, that's right. I've ridden that yellow dog very many miles in my days. Not as many as you have, but I've taken some long road trips myself for sure. And wanted to talk too about Little Rock Hall coming into this year. Knew it was going to be a very talented program. Now, as far as 4A teams, I mean, they pushed you guys as far as any 4A team has. And I read the Arkansas Democrat Gazette's recap of that, and I could tell you were not extremely happy about it. Just as far as you're happy with the win, but just as far as the overall things that went down in that game. Going back to the non-conference schedule, obviously, and there's no disrespect to the conference, but you're playing 5A and 6A schools, so you may be getting pushed a little bit more so in November and December. And not to say again that the conference teams don't, but just to be able to come out on top of that one in a 3-point win. Where did you maybe see some things from what you learned in non-conference play that really helped get you guys, after you had blown out a few teams, really to just be able to close that game out?
Yeah, we're really thankful to close that game out, because if it had went on a few more minutes, we were doing enough crazy stuff to give it away. We didn't do a really good job of preparing for that game. And that happens a lot of times when you get on a winning streak. Guys forget, to not to take it for granted. That, it's hard work, and you got to prepare for every single opponent. You got to respect every single opponent. And the practices leading up to it were not very good. And that was disappointing to me, because Hall is a very good program. They're gonna play you, and they're not gonna roll over. So, and I was just telling them, man, these guys are not gonna roll over. And I think we kind of took them for granted a little bit. And they were hard. They're difficult to play because of their style of play. And Coach Coleman does a lot of little things to keep you off balance. And if you're not really ready for them, they'll catch you with your pants down. And I think they got us. They got us in a place where I think it was a 3-point game. They had the ball with a chance to tie it. So, we escaped getting away from them. So I hope we learn the lessons this time, and we get in the gym and really prepare and get ready to play our best ball game.
And going back to what I was saying about some of the things that I had read from the ADG, and then you just being a really blunt guy, something I've always very much appreciated about that. Now, obviously, in today's world, it's a little bit different. Feelings are a little bit softer. Let's call it what it is. Yeah. Now, I would imagine at this point, as long as you've been at Mills and as long as you've been a basketball coach, parents and kids pretty much know the standard that it takes to play for you. You're going to be honest with them. You're going to go to bat for them, but you're going to say some things to them sometimes that maybe, is not the most comfortable to hear, but they need to hear it. In today's climate, have you found a little bit more difficulty being that way, or you just kind of always are who you are?
No, you got to adjust. Things at different times change, and if you don't adjust, you become a dinosaur. And so I've had to, my older players, they'll say, "Coach, you've gotten soft." No, I adjusted. I didn't get soft. I just found you still have the same standard, but you have to change your delivery timing sometimes. And one thing about Mills is, I sometimes I didn't have to get on them as much because our fans got on them, because they're used to seeing a standard of play too. And so when they were asking, after the Hall game, what were y'all doing out there? And so, we're turning the ball over, playing fast with a 7-point lead or whatever it was, and rushing and turning. It was just a lot of stuff that was just unforced errors. And our fan base is tough too. So once you set a standard, they expect a certain thing. And I think that I didn't have to do a lot. I knew in the newspaper. I called some of them out in the newspaper, because sometimes when the message not getting through in practice, sometimes that you use other ways to get the message through. And I think the fans were tougher on them than I was. But yeah, I definitely had to adjust, and a lot of ways that I coached. I'm still honest. I'm gonna be blunt, but I had to tone it down some, and that's just kind of goes with what the territory is and the climate we live in, and so I had to make a few adjustments.
And talking about those standards, so the program has, I believe it's 4 state titles in Mills history. The first one in 2004, and then the rest have been under your watch. Now, was it 2011 or 12 that you got? I know you've been there a little over a decade. We went there 11. My first year 11-12, but we lost. Our first championship was actually in 2017. Yeah, so you won that 2000. I learned through failure. Yeah. Well, hey, that's how, exactly. And of course, you think about the amount, I talk about this too with people that, it's like there have been coaches that have been to multiple, but they may have lost more. I'm just speaking hypothetically, but then it's like, well, there's plenty that have been doing this for a long time. I mean, decades, and don't even reach one game. And then you won it in 2017. And really it's interesting because, of course, earlier we talked with Coach Becky Yarbrough from Pulaski Academy. She was the coach of that 2020 Star City team that split with Farmington, and you were a part of that Mills team. Who was it y'all split? Was it Magnolia that y'all split with? So I always like to get, and thankfully we're getting further and further away from COVID, where we don't have to talk about it as much anymore. But I always do like to get the takes, especially of the basketball teams that endured that, because the spring sports didn't really get to play at all, but basketball played their entire year, and only 4 teams, the girls and boys from 1A and 2A, got to play their state championship games. So as much as I know it is hard to talk about, what was it like for Raymond Cooper and the Mills comments as far as you guys' experience and just being told that you're not going to be able to play the game?
Oh, it was a surreal moment. I never will forget it. We were playing Magnolia again, and our kids were jacked to play them. I mean, we were having the most intense practices I've ever seen. And the guys were like, man, coach, they all but guaranteed me we were going to win. Coach, we guarantee you. I would kick them out of practice because it was getting so physical. And I was like, man, I've never had a team ever probably be more prepared for a game than that game. So we're literally at practice the day before the game. And somebody comes over and tells me, I can't remember who it was. Somebody comes in the gym and say, hey, man, the game may be canceled. And I'm like, get out of here. So they come over the intercom. So I found out mid-practice over the intercom. And so at that point, we were just kind of like, you in disbelief, and kind of, so, but still we're holding out because nobody knew what this was going to be.
Thought it might be a day or two.
Yeah, we figured a day or two, they'll reschedule it. We're talking about guys staying sharp and the guys they were so disappointed because they were really looking forward because we had so many matchups with them and they were really chomping at the bit. And so kind of a couple of weeks, I knew after about a week went by, I said, oh, this not looking good. And I knew when we got because they kept telling us, well, maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll see. And after about a week, and then I knew going into that second week, I said, it'll be like starting the season over with. Everybody's out of condition. It doesn't take long to get out of conditioning and to get out the sharp. I said, I don't think we're going to play. And it was kind of disappointing because we won, we split it, but we really would have loved the opportunity to, play it out. But it was a moment I definitely will not forget because when that intercom, because I didn't believe it. When somebody came into the practice, I can't remember who it was, and told me, and I didn't believe it. I was like, nah. And then it just kind of turned into what it was, and so we'll accept it.
You won it the next year though, so at least it worked out in that regard. You won it the next year, yeah. That's one thing, man. I still to this day have because you don't want to call it an asterisk season because that's just a disrespect to the teams, in my opinion. But then at the same time, I put myself in the players and the coaches' positions, and I'm like, man, I almost would rather lose than it's obviously it's a tough situation because it's like nothing that we could have predicted, but it's so hard because you're like, okay, yes, we made it to the game. We're still co-champs, but there's so many things, but that was just a really tough time for everybody.
Yeah, it's one that we'll look back and talk about years from now because it was an amazing time period and all the things we had to navigate, and then all the things we had to navigate coming back from it, the mask and water bottles and keeping guys separate and this social distancing. It was definitely a time, a once in a life. I hope and pray it's a once in a lifetime type of deal.
Yeah, because I remember even during going into football the next year, that whole season, of course, there were teams that opted out of the playoffs. We didn't even know that next school year, even into basketball, if we were going to still have sports. We made it through football, and we just were like, because it was a week-to-week thing. You didn't know who was going to cancel or who was going to have enough players to even field a team. It was just crazy times. But, well, Coach, as we finish up here, I certainly don't like to end on sad notes, but it's a bit of a good note too, because, the Mills family right now is hurting really bad. The city of Little Rock has had a lot of hurtful times really in the last week. And, we were able to see your girls team. They got a win over Fountain Lake. So, of course, I'm obviously referring to just the tragedy where Cindy Gregory was, because of the actions of a gutless coward, mother, a sister, a friend, a wife was taken away. And obviously that has greatly affected the Mills family, with that being Coach Zip Gregley, the girls basketball coach's wife. And Jordan played for the Comets a few years ago. Geneva currently does. And they've also got another daughter as well. So it's just hurt so many people. But I know for you, as someone has been at Mills for a long time, and to be able to see the way that the team came together with the crowd again after that Fountain Lake game, I know in the midst of tragedy, that had to be a real silver lining for the school.
Yeah, it's been really a difficult time. One of the most difficult of my career. They're a lovely family. They are great people, and we're a tight knit group, boys and girls. We're all tight knit, and we pull for the girls pull for us. And just seeing what that family had to endure and go through with this it was just a senseless act of violence. It makes no sense that. And Cindy was very, very good with our kids, because she came up and helped out. She does yoga with our kids, and so our kids all know this family, and so it was a very difficult time. When I got the call, I just couldn't believe it, and my first thing was to call Malvern and say, "There's no way that we can possibly play with this. It's just gonna be my guys want to." Even the guys, they were calling me all night, "Coach, what's going on?" So I had to kind of talk to our guys, because the guys and the girls are both really, really close. And so it's been difficult for us as well as the girls team. And so just my prayers just go out to the family, and we'll be here for them and pick up the pieces as best we can. Geneva, I was at the house the night after it happened. And Tuesday, Geneva wanted to play. She said, "My mom would want me to play," because I was going to cancel Friday's game also too. And she said, "My mom will want me to play." And I said, "Okay, we're going to play Friday." And, it was emotional day, emotional time. And I think the girls really played for her. I mean, they played their best game of the season. I mean, they really got after it. And so, and I'm sure that Miss Gregory would really be proud of us. And because she wants us to her daughters to always excel in everything, and so Geneva represented, and the girls basketball team represented her, I think, as best as we possibly could.
Yeah, no doubt about that, and definitely continued prayers and condolences not only to the family but to Mills as well. And you can, talking about games, you can certainly check out all those, basketball and football, on the Mills Sports Network here on the Natural State Sports Network. Coach, I'll actually, before we get off here, I do want to ask you about that, because we've obviously gotten some really good feedback from these networks. Of course, not only do the kids get, what we would like to think are pretty well quality, and I can say this about Will Watkins with what he does behind the scenes with the graphics and the overall productions, but how much has that, and not just with what our network does, but what you see throughout the state, throughout the nation, how much of these networks help the kids get noticed?
Man, I think it's awesome, because now colleges can watch the games, they can watch them live. So it helps the recruiting, so I can tell a guy, instead of me having to send film, they can watch the games right there live. I think it's been great for our community, especially when we can't travel. And, some people can't travel, and especially when those conferences where we had to travel a long ways. So we got a loyal fan base. I think we're one of the top teams in viewership.
I believe that's correct. Yes. I know y'all are at least, you're in the top two, if I'm,
so pretty sure. I don't know where we are exactly, but I know our fans really love it. I love it. Even sometimes when I watch film, I will watch the broadcast instead of huddle.
Yeah.
Because I get to listen to the playback and the color, and then those guys are great. I think they bring an excitement to the state. I think this brings excitement for the kids. The kids absolutely love it. So I think it's awesome. I think this is a wonderful deal. At first, I was like, man, they're going to be able to scout us, but everybody's scouting it. It doesn't matter anymore. So,
there's no way away. There's no way around it now. There's no question. We've been talking with Mills, Coach. Or go ahead. I'm sorry.
Hey, but I really appreciate those guys. Those guys are great, and man, I hope we get to keep it up, because I think it's wonderful.
That's great to hear. Well, that was Mills boys coach Raymond Cooper. Coach, always a pleasure to talk to you. Really appreciate your insight, and again, Want to send our continued prayers again to the Mills community and the Gregory family. But great catching up with you as always.
All right. Thanks for having me on, Kyle.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, that will do it for episode number 52. Make sure you subscribe, YouTube, Apple, iHeartRadio, Spotify. We are there. We will catch you next week here on the Natural State Sports Network.